Yes, welcome our batch. Hope you have been studying and not wasting time. Now, we were talking about a lot on occupational health and hazards, and we had mentioned about the Factories Act 1948. Now, what is that? We had not discussed about it in detail. Let's see what is the Factories Act. It's a law regulating the labor welfare in factories, labor law. And the prime objective is to protect the workers against any industrial accidents, occupational hazards. It mainly provides for the health, safety, welfare, and many other aspects of the worker. Now, it is a big collection of chapters, the whole Act. It has introduction, objects of the Act, definitions. It talks about the factory inspectorate, about health, safety, additional safety measures, welfare, and annual leave with wages. How much leave they would get with wages. What are the obligations of a worker? What are the obligations of an employer? Now, penalties. And lastly, a summary. Now, introducing the Act, the first Factory Act was passed in 1881. It was later amended many times, 4 times, and Indian government enacted the Factories Act in 1948. It was a comprehensive piece of legislation which came into force from April 1949. Now, the next chapter, objects of the Act. What are the objectives of this Act? It is to ensure the workers' health, safety, welfare, proper working hours, leave and other benefits, now when we have to talk about the Act, there is a special mention about what is a factory. There is a definition for a factory. It says that any premises in which 10 or more workers are employed and a manufacturing process is going on with the aid of a power. This is one thing you have to remember. When there is a power used for the process, 10 or more workers, if are employed, comes under the Factory Act. Now, if there is no power, and if the premises has 20 or more workers, then that unit comes under the factory and will be under the Factory Act. So, without the aid of power, 20 or more workers. With the aid of power, 10 or more workers. Now, what do they mean by manufacturing process? There are certain process which are taken under this manufacturing process. Nearly most of the things come under it. Making, altering, repairing, any act of washing, cleaning, demolishing, transport, disposal, or pumping of oil, water, generating or transmitting energy, printing presses, lithography, construction processes, constructing, reconstructing, repairing, and preserving or storing any article in cold storage. So cold storage activities also comes under the Factories Act. Now, who do we call a worker? Now, as per Section 2(1) in the Factory Act 1948, a person, remember clearly these questions are asked in MCQs and all. A person employed directly or through any agency, including a contractor, is a worker, with or without the knowledge of the principal employer, whether for remuneration. So any person employed directly or indirectly is a worker, and who works in any manufacturing process, which we have mentioned before. Now, who is an occupier? He owns the business. He's solely responsible for all the things in his factory and answerable for all the happenings and mishappenings of the premises. And all the rules and regulations set by him have to be first approved by the state government or the chief inspector. So whenever he comes out with a rule, it has to be approved by the government or the chief inspector. Now, what is a factory inspectorate? The occupier has to arrange to register the factory with the chief inspector for a license, and this inspector has an authority to examine or check the premises, plant, machinery, and documents maintained under the Act. Health. It says that the Act should provide appropriate measures for cleanliness. There should not be any effluent in the environment, should not be any disposal of waste and effluents. Maintain adequate ventilation and reasonable temperature. Prevent inhalation of dust, fumes, and their accumulation in any room, and ensure proper standards of humidity by humidification. Overcrowding must be avoided in a factory. There should be wholesome drinking water. There should be a separate male-female latrine and urinal accommodation. There should be sufficient number of spittoons and should be maintained in a clean and hygienic conditions. And this has to be very carefully checked and maintained by the inspector, sanitary inspector. Safety. Now, appropriate safety measures should be provided in the factory. If there is any dangerous parts or machines, it has to be fenced or covered. Women and children should be prohibited from employment near cotton openers, because there's a lot of cotton dust coming, and it is a place where cotton is made into yarns, and it is made into rolled. Now, protect the workers from repairing machinery in motion. Proper hoist and lift has to be there. No one should have to lift up a lot of things and carry weights on the steps. All the floors, steps, stairs, passages, and ways in good condition and without any wet places. Now, no one should be allowed to carry or move any load so heavy as to be likely to cause him injury. It should be prohibited. And the workers should be protected from injury to eyes or some particles flying into their eyes. Workers should be protected from dangerous fumes, fires, and proper precautionary measures should be taken. If any part of the building or a machinery is in a repairable state, or it has to be repaired and now not working, it has to be seen that the person working there does not work there, because it can be hazardous. The Act also requires that if there is more than 1,000 or more workers, a safety officer should be employed and has to be notified by the state government. Now, while designing and manufacturing of the materials, the safety has to be taken into consideration. The health also should be taken into consideration. Factories carrying hazardous waste, hazardous process, handling hazardous substances. A safety committee has to be set in with equal management or representation from workers and management. The welfare measures. There should be some comfort at the working place. Separate washing facilities has to be there for males and females. Storing of clothes. When they have to come and change their clothes, there has to be a proper cover for keeping it. And if they have to wash it and dry it for the next day, there has to be proper places and means of doing it. Now, when there are persons working in a standing position for a long time, there should be some provision to sit. There should be a chair or a bench near that so that he can take a rest for some time. There should be adequate restrooms, shelters, lunch rooms should be provided by factories ordinary employing 150 workers. There should be first aid boxes or cupboards for if there are more than 150 workers. Ambulance facility for more than 500 or more workers. If there are more than 250 workers, canteens of prescribed standards should be run on non-profit basis by a canteen committee. Where 500 or more workers are ordinarily employed, the occupier should have a welfare officer in that industry. Now, how many hours should a person work? The minimum hours and the maximum. An adult worker cannot be employed for more than 48 hours in a week. Must be given a holiday for a whole day in every week. Cannot be employed for more than 9 hours a day, and should get an interval of rest of at least half an hour after maximum 5 hours of work. Overtime for more than 9 hours a day or 48 hours a week should be paid double wages. A woman worker cannot be employed except between the hours of 6 in the morning and 7 in the evening. Employment of children below 14 years is totally prohibited. A child above 14 years but below 15 years can be employed for maximum 4.5 hours a day. A child cannot be employed during the night time from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. A child worker must have a certificate of fitness granted by a certifying surgeon. A child above 15 years can be employed as an adult if he has a certificate of fitness to perform full day's work. A prescribed register has to be maintained for child workers. Annual leave should be provided to the workers. A worker shall be allowed each year leave with wages at the rate of 1 day for every 20 days and 15 days in case of child worker. Leave can be accumulated for up to 30 days in case of an adult and 40 days in case of a child. The leave admissible is exclusive of all the holidays. On termination of service for any reason, wages are to be paid in lieu of the annual leave. Annual leave को consider करके the wages have to be paid. Obligations of the worker. Now, what are the duties of a worker? He shall not interfere with any appliance or articles provided for securing health, safety and welfare of the workers. He should not interfere or meddle with any of the articles provided for securing health, safety and welfare of the workers. He should not carry any act that endangers himself or others and shall not willfully neglect to make use of the safety appliances. Now, if he does not do this, he does not follow these rules, that is contravening above provisions, is punishable with fine or imprisonment or both. Now, what are the obligations of the employer? Approval of the government, approval from the government regarding location, plan and construction of the factory and license and registration certificate for operation. Then he has to implement, the employer has to implement all the provisions of the Act concerning health, safety and welfare. He has to maintain the registers and records and submit the returns under the Act. Now, he has to report fatal accidents, occupational diseases contracted by any workman to the government. Now, contravention of the provision of the Act or any rule, the occupier or the manager may be punished by fine of up to 1 lakh rupees or imprisonment of up to 2 years or both. Greater punishments are prescribed for subsequent contraventions. Obstructing inspector or not allowing the worker to meet the inspector or for refusing to produce records demanded by the inspector. If any worker contravenes any provision of the Act, he may be punished with prescribed fine. Okay, now let's talk about the brief summary of the full Act. The Act contains many important provisions, especially regarding health, safety, welfare, employment of young persons and women, children, hours of work for adults and children, holidays, and leave with wages. The responsibility for administration of the Act is with the state government, who administers it through their own factory inspectors. So that's all about the Factories Act. The safer work, better lives. If the workplace is safe, the life is better. So thank you, students. Stay safe, stay healthy. Now go through this video at least once or twice and be ready for the assessment. And don't miss the assessment because your marks may be counted as an internal. We don't know. We are all collecting all your marks. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.